And you see at the hatchway the 4 departing Crew 9 crew members posing for some final photos. Final handshakes and hugs between the departing Crew 9 crew members and the crew members who will remain on board the International Space Station, maintaining a continuous human presence on the orbital laboratory that began on November 2nd, 2000. Once again, we're in a brief handover between satellites that provide the downlink TV capability from the station. We'll be regaining that downlink TV just a moment or two from now. You saw the Crew 9, 2 of the Crew 9 crew members, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore, already in their entry suits. Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanoff will don their suits once inside Dragon. Hague and Gorbanoff flew up to the International Space Station back on September 28th. So they're wrapping up a mission almost 6 months in duration. Williams and Wilmore, of course, with their extended mission in the home stretch of a 9.5-month flight spanning 121.3 million statute miles. And now inside Dragon, you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. In the center of your screen, Alexander Gorbanoff. Nick Hague on the far right. They will settle into their respective seats aboard Freedom as countdown clocks here in Mission Control are ticking backward toward the time of the command to initiate the opening of hooks holding Freedom to its docking port on the space-facing side of the Harmony module. That command to be issued about an hour and 55 minutes from now. The actual physical separation, what we peg as undocking for the history books, is scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
SpaceX copies on hatch closure. We'll send a command momentarily to transition the state machine to hatch closed. You can reference your hatch closed event details for a few actions and then complete suit donning per procedure 4.010.
Freedom copies all.
And Nick Hague aboard Freedom confirming that Dragon's hatch to the International Space Station is closed That call coming at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So the Crew 9 crew now safely aboard the Dragon Freedom will complete their suit-up procedures, do systems checks. There will be a series of leak checks between Freedom and the International Space Station at the docking interface. You see Sunny Williams on the far right-hand side of your screen. She will be seated next to Nick Hague, the Freedom Commander. To Hague's right will be Alexander Gorbanoff, and you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. The undocking between Freedom and the International Space Station will take Freedom above and behind the orbital laboratory through a series of what are known as departure burns. Freedom then will swing below the space station on a trajectory for the deorbit burn, a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver that is scheduled at 4:11 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday afternoon, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. That will slow Dragon down by more than 50 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the coast of Florida. Once again, the 4 Dragon Freedom crew members you see in this view. Butch Wilmore on the far left, Alexander Gorbanoff with his back to the camera, Nick Hague just out of the field of view, and Sunny Williams on the far right of your screen. The hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The station hatch will be closed just a short time from now, enabling a series of leak checks to occur to make sure we have an airtight seal before the pressurization of pressurized mating adapter number 2 can begin. The vestibule will be depressed to vacuum, setting the stage for the initiation of the commanding of the opening of the hooks holding Dragon in place and the physical separation of Dragon from Harmony, with undocking scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're just joining us, you're looking live inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom. The Crew 9 crew all on board. On the far left, Butch Wilmore. On the far right, Sunny Williams, who launched back on June 5th aboard a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, returning on Tuesday aboard the Dragon Freedom to complete what will be 286 days in space, 285 of which will have been spent on the International Space Station. Just to put their long-duration mission into context, it is not the longest mission in the history of U.S. spaceflight, the longest single mission. That distinction belongs to NASA's Frank Rubio, who had his mission extended due to a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft that he was launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A replacement Soyuz was launched by Roscosmos. Rubio came home subsequent to that with a total of 371 days in space. Behind him, Mark Vande Hei, NASA astronaut, logged 355 days in space. Scott Kelly, 340. Christina Cook, 328. And Peggy Whitson, 289. On the far left of your screen, a good view of Dragon with its open nose cap. That nose cone will be closed following Tuesday's deorbit burn as part of the pre-entry procedures. Once again, moving into a quick handover here between satellites on our tracking and data relay satellite system. The Dragon crew all on board. The hatch is closed between Dragon and the International Space Station. The station hatch will be closed a short time from now, and leak checks at the docking interface between the two spacecraft will begin to make sure we have an airtight seal before the small passageway or vestibule known as pressurized mating adapter number 2 will be ready for depressurization down to vacuum and the subsequent undocking of Dragon from Harmony's space-facing port about an hour and 47 minutes from now. Looking once again inside Dragon, Butch Wilmore on the left. Settling into his seat is the commander of Dragon, veteran NASA astronaut Nick Hague. On the far right of your screen, Sonny Williams. Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov is completing a few adjustments to items with his seat. He will don his entry suit just a few moments from now, and all 4 crew members will be positioned ready for undocking and the beginning of a 17-hour trip back to Earth and a conclusion to this mission. As mentioned earlier, this is not the first time that Wilmore and Williams have been aboard the Dragon Freedom.
Freedom, com check from C2.
C2 SpaceX, we have you loud and clear. Help me.
Get you the same. I'm suited and seated, working on Alex, and we'll be finishing up and ready for CP checks here shortly.
SpaceX copies all.
That communication between the spacecraft communicator at SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, and Dragon's commander Nick Hague. The communications checks continuing. Alexander Gorbunov yet to suit up. He will momentarily. As mentioned earlier, Williams and Wilmore not strangers to the Dragon Freedom. They have practiced suit-up procedures over the course of the past few months and took a ride aboard Freedom for a few minutes back on November 3rd when the spacecraft undocked from the forward port of the Harmony module and relocated to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Slightly longer trip for Williams and Wilmore today, a 17-hour journey that will take them to a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Just to recap, the 4 crew members who are coming home tomorrow aboard the SpaceX Dragon Freedom are all inside Freedom. 3 of the crew members suited up and strapped into their seats. Alexander Gorbunov is completing some preparations before he dons his entry suit. The hatch between Freedom and the International Space Station was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. We are awaiting the closing of the hatch between the International Space Station on that side of the docking interface to permit leak checks to begin and ensure that we have an airtight seal before the vestibule or passageway is depressurized prior to undocking. The Dragon crew members will also undergo leak checks to their suits and further communications checks prior to the undocking itself, which is scheduled about an hour and 41 minutes from now at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern. So as we stand by for confirmation that the station hatch is closed on that side of the docking interface, that activity to be supervised by Ann McClain, the NASA astronaut and commander of the Dragon Endurance that just arrived at the International Space Station, kicking off a handover period of just over a day between the two crews, an abbreviated handover compared to others that have preceded it, that designed to provide this opportunity for undocking, thus maximizing the best weather conditions that were forecast for this coming week, over the next few days. This is our best shot with pristine weather off the coast of Florida to bring the Crew 9 crew home.
On station on 2 for IDA egress.
Go ahead on 2.
We are in step 5.2, and we found some pieces of dust around the hatch seal area, so we are going to clean them with cotton tape.
Copy and concur with the plan.
Japan Aerospace Exploration. Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, newly arrived on the station as part of Crew 10, noticing a few flecks of dust along the hatch seals, so he will clean those off. We want to make sure that there's no foreign object debris at that hatch seal that could compromise the integrity of an airtight seal between pressurized mating adapter number 2 and the interface with the Dragon Freedom. You're looking right across Nick Hague, the commander of the Dragon Freedom, the mission director at SpaceX's Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, reporting back to NASA Flight Director Marcos Flores here in Mission Control in Houston, that we're just about ready for suit leak checks.
Waiting for call for 5.3.
TOC, you are go for step 5.3.
Okay, copy. We are go for closing APUS hatch, and I have one question for you.
Go ahead.
Another view of the crew aboard Dragon Freedom looking...
There is one SpaceX bag. It's labeled as unarmed PFD. The bag number is 153, and its carabiner is attached to one of the bungees in PMS3. Can we just leave it as it is?
Checking.
Once again, you're looking at a view across the 4 crew members, Butch Wilmore in the foreground, Alexander Gorbanoff to his left, then Nick Hague, and just obscured on the far right-hand side of this configuration is Sonny Williams.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop, section 5 complete. We've got everybody suited with successful intercom checks.
SpaceX copies on successful intercom checks. Continue to Section 6.
And in preparation of the leak checks of the 4 suits by the Crew 9 crew members, Butch Wilmore and the others putting their hands in their gloves. Those will be securely zipped in place before the leak checks will begin.
Station Houston on the big loop for the bag.
Go ahead on 2.
We would like you to remove that bag from PMA 3 temp stow in node 2, and we will find a permanent home for it after the undock.
Okay, we'll temp stow it in node 2.
SpaceX Freedom on the big loop. Section 6 is complete.
SpaceX copies completion of 4.010.
The hatch between the International Space Station and pressurized mating adapter number 2 is now closed. The Dragon hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Just about 2 minutes ago at 10:26 Central, 11:26 p.m. Eastern, the station hatch also closed, and that sets the stage for the vestibule depressurization and final leak checks at the docking interface. Another perspective of Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanoff. Butch Wilmore is to Gorbanoff's right. Essentially, you're looking over the shoulder of Sonny Williams, who's in the far left seat, if you will, in the seating configuration on the Dragon Freedom.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. You have a go for procedure 4.011. We'll meet you in Section 2 when ready.
Freedom copies go for 4.011 sealing check and press through Section 1. Check in with you in Section 2.
The crew closing their visors in advance of the individual leak checks on their suits.
Station Houston on the big loop for Ann prior to hatch close.
ISS.
And taking a look at stowage and PMA3 currently, we are seeing the APAS hatch cover, and we need that to go into the 0.5 CTB for DMAC.
Okay, we will put the hatch cover into the half CTB.
Thank you.
That conversation between Capcom Tess Caswell here in Mission Control and Ann McLean in your field of view, the Dragon Endurance Commander.
We're ready to pressurize.
As she checks the integrity of the hatch interface on the station side, the station hatch is closed. That's the androgynous docking adapter hatch. One more hatch has to be closed. That's the one between Harmony and the vestibule to International Docking Adapter 2. Meanwhile, leak checks now are beginning on the 4 suits of the Dragon Crew 9 passengers aboard the Dragon Freedom. The suit leak checks are underway. This should only take a minute or two.
And the Houston Station on 2, checking for step 7.4.
TOC, you are go to deploy desiccant in 7.4.
Copy, go for 7.4.
Freedom. We've got 4 good suits.
Freedom, we see the same 4 healthy suits.
And that call by Dragon Commander Nick Hague confirming that all 4 suits of the departing Freedom crew members have checked out, good leak checks on the suits, good integrity on those suits. So we now have set the stage for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew 9 crew members just about 1 hour and 24 minutes from now. Just to recap, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore accompanying Commander Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunov for the ride downhill and a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon. We will be resuming our coverage, joined not just here at the Johnson Space Center but by our colleagues in Hawthorne, California at the SpaceX Control Center. We will be back on the air just over an hour from now at 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 12:45 a.m. Eastern Time for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew 9 crew from the International Space Station. The weather conditions off the coast of Florida and the splashdown sites continues to be good, with splashdown of Williams, Wilmore, Gorbanoff, and Hague scheduled for Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. So with the Crew 9 crew strapped into their seats and good leak checks for their suits on the Dragon Freedom, we'll sign off for now, and we'll be back with you just over an hour from now for our undocking coverage. For now, we'll sign off. This is Mission Control Houston.
Ooh, they better not have signed off. Did they sign off?
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
So this is a rebroadcast of,
Ignition and
I believe this was when they left on Thursday or Friday, I mean. How you doing, everybody?
vehicle pitching downrange.
Space Station. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 10. And we're continuing to get good call-outs on the first stage performance so far.
We'll tune into something here when cut into this in a minute. Yes, I'm going to stream the Splashdown. That's going to be tomorrow. I got the times on the screen right here.
Continuing to get good performance call-outs.
So just before 6 Eastern, just before 5 Central, just before 4 Mountain, just before 3 Pacific Standard Time.
That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see on ascent.
So yeah, I'll probably be on maybe an hour before that. I'll probably get online around, let's see, around 4 o'clock.
You're now just over 1 minute and 10
And I'll keep an eye on it
today's
during the day
flight,
to see if
traveling
they're going to be
more than
early or something.
1,400 miles
They're
per
saying
hour.
it's like 18 hours.
And we just heard that call out for 1 Bravo, which means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. And the crew already pulling over 2 Gs. Next up, we'll have a couple of events happening in rapid succession.
Back chill started.
First will be that engine chill on the second stage impact engine, which we just heard.
This was the rocket carrying the Dragon capsule that went up and took the crew of 4.
We'll be separating from one another.
And they're replacing some of the International Space Station crews that are up there right now.
Back to Earth. Now we're just 2 minutes into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling just under 4,000 miles per hour.
We're just about 20
So
seconds
what did
away
they say?
from
It took
those
them like
events that
28
I
hours
just
to get there.
mentioned. The 9 Merlin
From
engines will
this
shut
point to
down
the time that they
here in
docked
just about
with
10
the
seconds.
space station, it was like 28 hours.
Stage separation and SES-1.
Main engine cutoff.
SpaceX Dragon, 2 Alpha. Stage separation confirmed.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Great call-outs and incredible views there on your left-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, you can see a view from stage 1.
Man, look at those sound waves.
Awesome views of that boost back burn on the first stage, as well as the MVAC engine igniting on the second stage. Great views there. Now the booster is in its boost back burn. This is the first of 3 burns as it makes its way back down to Earth. This will last about 45 seconds. And the crew 10 crew is still on board Dragon, attached to Falcon 9 second stage, which you can see there on your right-hand screen.
And we're now at 3 minutes and 20 seconds into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling about 6,500 miles per hour. They are on their way to the space station. And we did have that confirmation coming up of the boost back shutdown, and then coming up.
This modern technology still amazes me.
Minute mark.
And there they are. That's the one that went up.
We have our first images of the crew inside the Dragon spacecraft as they make their way into orbit.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to get good call-outs.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
The stage 2, it continues to be on power with in its firing until we get to that second stage engine cutoff around the 9-minute mark of flight. About 5 minutes of flight to go before Dragon will be flying free.
Some cool views there on your left-hand screen. That's the first stage booster as it's making its way back down to Earth. This is a ground tracking camera getting these awesome views.
And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that lone Merlin vacuum engine of the second stage. We're continuing to get good performance on the second stage. And the crew's G-loads will dip right when we hit the separation events, and it's going to continue to build up until then.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
We're now at 5 minutes into today's flight with a liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. Continuing to get good call-outs as Stage 1 makes its way back to Earth, and Stage 2 continues to fire, propelling Dragon into orbit.
If you're just now joining us, the 4 members of Crew 10 launched from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And they're currently on board Dragon, still attached to Falcon 9 second stage, which you're seeing there on your right-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, the first stage vehicle is making its way back down to Earth. It already completed the first of 3 burns as the boost back burn. And the next event coming up for that vehicle is going to be the entry burn.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Great call-outs there. That entry burn is coming up.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
That entry burn is
And every once in a while, if you look to the one on the right, you can see stuff flying past them. And I don't know if those are just like orbs or UFOs or if that's just space junk.
Dragon and the second stage continue traveling at over 12,000 miles per hour, making their way into orbit and on the way to the International Space Station.
There, we just saw on the screen, it was very quick, but we had the entry burn, which we got some cool views of that from the ground, which is awesome.
Amazing.
Now, the next event coming up will be the landing burn for the first stage. That's coming up here in about 30 seconds.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Again, great call-outs for
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
Confirmation there from the crew as they continue to make their way into orbit. Now 7 minutes into today's flight, the first stage making its way back down to Earth and the second stage continuing to fire.
This is an awesome view. Let's see if we can see the center engine relight for that landing burn here in a few seconds. There's that landing burn. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 1.
That is so freaking cool. Freaking amazing. It still amazes me. Whether it's this one or the one that happened here in Texas, South Padre Island, or Boca Chica Beach,
Has made its way back to Earth.
where the tower catches
the
it.
second
Still,
engine cutoff, which we're expecting around the 9-minute mark of today's flight. We're continuing to get good call-outs, and Dragon and all of the systems on the vehicle are performing as expected. Just over 8 minutes into today's flight, traveling more than 21,000
Mike,
miles
this was
per
from
hour.
Friday evening when they took off to connect with the ISS.
Hearing good call-outs. We're about 30 seconds away from that second engine cutoff, and then shortly after that, about a minute or so later, we will have orbital insertion.
SpaceX Dragon, Shannon.
SpaceX copy, Shannon.
And that call out there for Shannon, and that is the call out for Shannon, Ireland, which is the final abort stage for the second stage off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for a second engine cutoff.
And back shutdown.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And there we heard confirmation
Launch escape system disarmed.
Good confirmation of orbital insertion. Crew 10 is now well on their way to the International Space Station following a 9.5-minute flight uphill.
Now, the second stage is preparing for Dragon separation here, which should happen shortly. In about 10-15 seconds is what we're expecting. Now we're preparing for stabilizing the second stage so that we can have a smooth separation.
And there you can see on the left-hand side of your screen.
Something broke.
There on your screen you can see that Dragon separation, that second stage making its way. And Dragon is now flying free. 10 minutes into today's flight. That was about a minute after we had that second engine cutoff and orbital insertion. And it looks like a good separation, good rates. Dragon now flying free.
See, so I'm wondering.
There on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see some.
So I'm wondering what happens to
inside the Dragon
the rocket part that Dragon separated from.
Dragon, SpaceX.
Does that fall to Earth and get recovered, or does that just stay up there floating somewhere?
Team, we thank you for flying with Falcon and wish you a great mission. Over to LD.
It was an honor flying with you this evening. We wish you well on your journey and give Crew 9 our best. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
SpaceX Dragon, this is Crew 10 Commander Ann McClain. Thank you to all of the teams from across the world who contributed to the launch today. Spaceflight is tough, but humans are tougher. Days like today are made possible only when people choose to do the harder right over the easier wrong. Build relationships, choose cooperation, and believe in the inherent goodness of all people across the world. To my family and friends, without you, I would not be here. Explore boldly, live gracefully, go Crew 10. Now over to pilot Nicole Ayers. Nicole Ayers again. We're not the first humans to get to orbit, and we wouldn't be here without the bravery and hard work of those who have paved the way for human spaceflight. We now get the unique perspective of Earth without borders and get to revel in the connectedness of humanity. I would be remiss to not once again acknowledge those who helped me get here to this wonderful view and this perspective, to the teachers, coaches, fellow officers, fellow teammates, Raptor Nation, to my friends and family that encouraged my dreams from the start. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you.
That's true. Thank you for flying SpaceX. The crew will be by with peanuts and drinks in a moment.
I want to say a huge thank you to NASA and SpaceX, especially the Falcon 9 team for the successful launch, and we are looking forward to a smooth ride to the International Space Station. 日本の皆さん、たくさんの応援ありがとうございます。9年ぶりの無重力の感覚をかみしめてます。これから先の ISS への宇宙の旅楽しんでいきたいと思います。
Part of the training is to measure them. Those seats are custom made for each one of them. They have to fit into them perfectly because of their long ride.
Russian Пользуясь такой чудесной возможностью, хочу поздравить с 65-летием со дня начала подготовки первого отряда. И также хочу сказать спасибо большое за те знания и жизненный опыт, который мной были получены в всех стенах для того, чтобы выполнить этот полет. А также спасибо школе номер 14 города Назарова, Ульяновскому высшему авиационному училищу гражданской авиации и авиакомпании «Макар» и «Нордвин», где я начинал свой путь в небо. И, конечно же, спасибо большое семье и за поддержку.
Thank you, Crew 10. At this time, I can report nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon, copies.
I wonder how that works, Mike. I really do. I wonder if they take some kind of medication so that they don't have to do any of that. I swear I heard that there was a little portable, like there's a bathroom in there somewhere. I don't know. These are real questions from regular people that we want to know. There you go. See what else is on.
All right, you're still here with us on Live Now from Fox. As you see, we are still listening into the NASA and SpaceX broadcasts. Let's listen in as now the Dragon capsule is en route to the International Space Station.
Underway. The 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during the launch and ascent portions have to retract, and then the nose cone will be able to start to swing open and deploy. Now, this uncovers a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the forward bulkhead thrusters and the docking hatch. Just pausing in case there were going to be any comms. And we did have good confirmation, good checkouts of the 12 Draco thrusters around the service section. Now, 4 to go.
I think I'm going to switch to a different stream. We'll come back to this one when NASA comes back.
Inside of Dragon. Now, soon the crew will be able to get their visors open.
Okay, so these guys are obviously up in space station. Yeah, I'll stick with this one because it shows the geographically where the space station is right now.
And the SpaceX mission control room in Hawthorne and the flight control room here in Houston. You're seeing Don Pettit and Alexei Ovchinin taking photographs of Butch Wilmore in his entry suit. Sonny Williams is in the foreground near the hatchway.
Okay, so we're 48 minutes away from the actual undocking.
SpaceX Dragons at the International Space Station. The one that the Crew 9 crew will be departing in a couple of hours from now is on the Zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. The newly arrived Crew 10 crew docked early Sunday morning to the forward port of Harmony in their Dragon Endurance.
Look at that speed. All the way to right, 27,596 kilometers per hour. Which is, yeah, 16,700 miles per hour.
The 4 departing Crew 9 crew members posing for some final photos.
There's Sunny. Well, she was in there a little while ago. She was in her seat. Those are pretty cool looking suits. Too bad we can't hear inside the cabin there.
Final handshakes and hugs between the departing Crew 9 crew members and the crew members who will remain on board the International Space Station, maintaining a continuous human presence on the orbital laboratory that began on November 2nd, 2000. Once again, we're in a brief handover between satellites that provide the downlink TV capability from the station. We'll be regaining that downlink TV just a moment or two from now. You saw the two of the Crew 9 crew members, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore, already in their entry suits. Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanoff will don their suits once inside Dragon. Hague and Gorbanoff flew up to the International Space Station back on September 28th. So they're wrapping up a mission almost 6 months in duration. Williams and Wilmore, of course, with their extended mission in the home stretch of a 9.5-month flight spanning 121.3 million statute miles.
Well, if you need a snack or whatever you got to do, we got about a good 45 minutes. And in case you didn't know, obviously I'm not going to stay connected for 18 hours. So once they disconnect and they start floating away and they're getting, they're on their way, we will end this and then to continue this, I'll be back on tomorrow, like about 4 o'clock Central Time.
Now inside Dragon, you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. In the center of your screen, Alexander Gorbanoff. Nick Hague on the far right. They will settle into their respective seats aboard Freedom as countdown clocks here in Mission Control are ticking backward toward the time of the command to initiate the opening of hooks holding Freedom to its docking port on the space-facing side of the Harmony module. That command to be issued about an hour and 55 minutes from now. The actual physical separation, what we peg as undocking for the history books, is scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
SpaceX copies on hatch closure. We'll send a command momentarily to transition the state machine to hatch closed. You can reference your hatch closed event details for a few actions and then complete suit donning per procedure 4.010.
Freedom copies all.
And Nick Hague aboard Freedom confirming that Dragon's hatch to the International Space Station is closed. That call coming at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So the Crew 9 crew now safely aboard the Dragon Freedom. Will complete their suit-up procedures, do systems checks. There will be a series of leak checks between Freedom and the International Space Station at the docking interface. You see Sunny Williams on the far right-hand side of your screen.
Sorry about that.
She will be seated next to Nick Hague, the Freedom commander. To Hague's right will be Alexander Gorbanoff, and you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. The undocking between Freedom and the International Space Station will take Freedom above and behind the orbital laboratory through a series of what are known as departure burns. Freedom then will swing below the space station on a trajectory for the deorbit burn, a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver that is scheduled at 4:11 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday afternoon, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. That will slow Dragon down by more than 50 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the coast of Florida. Once again, the 4 Dragon Freedom crew members you see in this view. Butch Wilmore on the far left, Alexander Gorbanoff with his back to the camera, Nick Hague just out of the field of view, and Sunny Williams on the far right of your screen. The hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The station hatch will be closed just a short time from now, enabling a series of leak checks to occur to make sure we have an airtight seal before the pressurization of pressurized mating adapter number 2 can begin. The vestibule will be depressed to vacuum, setting the stage for the initiation of the commanding of the opening of the hooks holding Dragon in place and the physical separation of Dragon from Harmony, with undocking scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're just joining us, you're looking live inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom. The Crew 9 crew all on board. On the far left, Butch Wilmore. On the far right, Sunny Williams, who launched back on June 5th aboard a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, returning on Tuesday aboard the Dragon Freedom to complete what will be 286 days in space, 285 of which will have been spent on the International Space Station. Just to put their long-duration mission into context, it is not the longest mission in the history of U.S. spaceflight, the longest single mission. That distinction belongs to NASA's Frank Rubio, who had his mission extended due to a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft that he was launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A replacement Soyuz was launched by Roscosmos. Rubio came home subsequent to that, with a total of 371 days in space. Behind him, Mark Vande Hei, NASA astronaut, logged 355 days in space. Scott Kelly, 340. Christina Cook, 328. And Peggy Whitson, 289. On the far left of your screen, a good view of Dragon with its open nose cap. That nose cone will be closed following Tuesday's deorbit burn as part of the pre-entry procedures. Once again, moving into a quick handover here between satellites on our tracking and data relay satellite system. The Dragon crew all on board. The hatch is closed between Dragon and the International Space Station. The station hatch will be closed a short time from now, and leak checks at the docking interface between the two spacecraft will begin to make sure we have an airtight seal before the small passageway or vestibule known as pressurized mating adapter number 2 will be
Yeah, I don't know how that works. I know they need some kind of fuel to project them in a certain direction. I don't know. This is all way beyond my pay grade. KK, I think he's talking about one of Vanessa's long live programs. No, she's still deactivated.
Looking once again inside Dragon, Butch Wilmore on the left. Settling into his seat is the commander of Dragon, veteran NASA astronaut Nick Hague. On the far right of your screen, Sonny Williams. Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov is completing a few adjustments to items with his seat. He will don his entry suit just a few moments from now, and all 4 crew members will be positioned, ready for undocking and the beginning of a 17-hour trip back to Earth and a conclusion to this mission.
I wonder if they sleep at all. I mean, at some point, I imagine computers are in control. Chris, nah, I don't think so. I think she's taking one of her patented hiatus vacations. where she says she'll be gone for 3 months and then
As
she
mentioned
comes
earlier,
back 2 days
this is
later.
not the first time that Wilmore and Williams have been aboard the Dragon Freedom.
SpaceX Freedom, check from C2.
C2 SpaceX, we have you loud and clear. How me?
Get you the same. I'm suited and seated, working on Alex, and we'll be finishing up and ready for CP checks here shortly.
SpaceX copies all.
That communication between the spacecraft communicator at SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, and Dragon's commander Nick Hague. The communications checks continuing. Alexander Gorbanov yet to suit up. He will momentarily. As mentioned earlier, Williams and Wilmore not strangers to the Dragon Freedom. They have practiced suit-up procedures over the course of the past few months and took a ride aboard Freedom for a few minutes back on November 3rd when the spacecraft undocked from the forward port of the Harmony module and relocated to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Slightly longer trip for Williams and Wilmore today, a 17-hour journey that will take them to a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
Oh, we got 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes before they start their activities. Anybody watching this JJ chick? I know Michael Knight is and Oriana is. Is JJ? I don't know I don't even know her real name or anything. I don't know anything about her.
Just to recap, the 4 crew members who are coming home tomorrow aboard the SpaceX Dragon Freedom are all inside Freedom. 3 of the crew members suited up and strapped into their seats. Alexander Gorbanov is completing some preparations before he dons his entry suit. The hatch between Freedom and the International Space Station was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. We are awaiting the closing of the hatch between the International Space Station on that side of the docking interface to permit leak checks to begin and ensure that we have an airtight seal before the vestibule or passageway is depressurized prior to undocking. The Dragon crew members will also undergo leak checks to their suits and further communications checks prior to the undocking itself, which is scheduled about an hour and 41 minutes from now at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
So about 30 minutes. And then another 30 minutes before they technically unlatch, disconnect. Oh yeah, I was talking about JJ. Apparently, she got a BBL. At first, I didn't know that because I don't watch her. I saw her on her stomach. She looks sick.
That activity to be supervised by Ann McClain, the NASA astronaut and commander of the Dragon Endurance that just arrived at the International Space Station, kicking off a handover period of just over a day between the two crews. An abbreviated handover compared to others that have preceded it, that designed to provide this opportunity for undocking, thus maximizing the best weather conditions that were forecast for this coming week, over the next few days. This is our best shot with pristine weather off the coast of Florida to bring the Crew 9 crew home.
My BBL story, I was going to say, when I worked for the airline and when I worked here at the airport, it's sad, but we see so many women come back sick, and sick from just having surgery. So a lot of people get these, super cheap bargain basement prices to do all these surgeries. And there's no recovery time. I mean, literally, whenever you wake up from being put under the anesthesia, they wake you up, they make sure you're okay, and then it's like, okay, get dressed, have a nice day. And then they usually right away hop on an airplane and head back. And it's like, what? Like, what? And these women can't walk. And I know they're not supposed to be sitting down, but they got these cushions and they're sitting on their butts on wheelchairs. And they just look horrible and they're in pain. And I'm like, how can you let somebody fly right after they've had, I consider that major surgery. After they've had major surgery, how do you let somebody get back on an airplane and not make sure they're okay? Not even 24 hours of recovery time under, medical supervision. It's just, okay, we're done. Zip it up. Put your clothes on and get the hell out of here. Too bizarre. I mean, that's how it's become.
The mission director at SpaceX's Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, reporting back to NASA Flight Director Marcos Flores here in Mission Control in Houston, that we're just about ready for suit leak checks.
Waiting for call for 5.3.
Talk, you are go for step 5.3.
Okay, copy. We are go for closing the APEX hatch, and I have one question for you.
Go ahead.
Another view of the crew aboard Dragon Freedom looking...
There is one SpaceX bag. It's labeled as unarmed PFD. The bag number is 153, and its carabiner attached to one of the bungees in PMS3. Can we just leave it as it is?
Checking.
Once again, you're looking at a view across the four crew members, Butch Wilmore in the foreground, Alexander Gorbanoff to his left, then Nick Hague, and just obscured on the far right-hand side of this configuration is Sonny Williams.
complete. We've got everybody suited with successful intercom checks.
SpaceX copies on successful intercom checks. Continue to Section 6.
And in preparation of the leak checks of the 4 suits by the Crew 9 crew members, Butch Wilmore and the others.
Hey, that was not a fart. That was my chair. Listen. See? All right. Just want to make sure. Yeah, I know how you people are. I know. I get it. That's all right.
Houston on the big loop for.
I would have farted. I would have said, whoops. I'd let one slip. There's no shame in that. I'd rather fart than be caught picking my nose.
We would like you to remove that bag from PMA 3, temp stow in node 2, and we will find a permanent home for it after the undock.
Okay, we'll temp stow it in node 2.
Ooh, I got ice cream, vanilla, natural vanilla from Breyers. It's been like a week, so I think I can have a little bit. I just saw something, and it scares the crap out of me. The thought that this could have possibly happened. Let me show you.
Freedom on the big loop. Section 6 is complete.
SpaceX copies completion of 4.010.
All right, check this out, guys. You ready for this?
The hatch between the International Space Station and pressurized mating adapter number 2 is now closed. The Dragon hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Just about 2 minutes ago at 10:26 Central, 11:26 p.m. Eastern, the station hatch also closed, and that sets the stage for the vestibule depressurization.
The thought. Whoops. Go back to my screen. The thought. Just the possibility that she had the absolute most remote chance that she could be a sheriff. Knowing what we know now of how she is, can you imagine that? Oh my God. No, this is from 2019. 2019. Can you imagine Vanessa, sheriff? Oh man, that's some scary crap.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. You have a go for procedure 4.011. We'll meet you in Section 2 when ready.
Yeah, it's going to be a little slow. There's another 18 minutes before something significant happens. So that's why I started looking at stuff and I saw that and I was like, oh my God. You know, not that there was a chance she would have won, but just the possibility that in some universe it might have happened.
Advance of the individual leak checks on their suits.
Good Lord. That's scary.
Station Houston on the big loop for Ann prior to hatch close. And taking a look at stowage and PMA3 currently, we are seeing the APAS hatch cover, and we need that to go into the 0.5 CTB for DMAC.
Okay, we will put the hatch cover into the half CTB.
Thank you.
That conversation between Capcom Tess Caswell here in Mission Control and Ann McLean in your field of view, the Dragon Endurance Commander.
Look at the socks.
As she checks the integrity of the hatch interface on the station side, the station hatch is closed. That's the androgynous docking adapter hatch. One more hatch has to be closed. That's the one between Harmony and the vestibule to International Docking Adapter 2. Meanwhile, leak checks now are beginning on the 4 suits of the Dragon Crew 9 passengers aboard the Dragon Freedom.
Man, there's way too much going on this screen here. And the left, from inside the ISS, they're sealing up whatever they got to seal. The hatch. Next to them are the Dragon crew that are headed back. They're testing their suits for leaks. The bottom is the map of the globe and where the ISS is right now. As you can see, it's passing by the southern tip of Africa. Then to the upper right, these views from external cameras on the International Space Station have been temporarily suspended due to routine loss of signal period. Okay. And those other 2 cameras are off right now. They're going 27,000 kilometers per hour, which is about over 16,000 miles per hour.
TOC, you are go to deploy desiccant in 7.4.
And the space station is so big. You know, everybody thinks space station, and I don't know, at least I do. I think about Alien and everybody waking up in a pod, and the things are so big, the rooms are big, and you know, all this white light and ultra modern and stuff. But yeah, I don't think it's, and there's no weightlessness. Everybody's just walking around like it's Earth. I don't know. You know what? Something tells me that her spidey senses, like the hairs on her arm, tingle when people are talking about her. Watch her come back in a couple days. Watch.
It's Freedom. We've got 4 good suits.
Freedom, we see the same 4 healthy suits.
And that call by Dragon Commander Nick Hague confirming that all 4 suits of the departing Freedom crew members have checked out, good leak checks on the suits, good integrity on those suits. So we now have set the stage for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew 9 crew members.
Hey, Carla.
About 1 hour and 24 minutes from now. Just to recap, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore accompanying Commander Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov for the ride downhill and a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon. We will be resuming our coverage, joined not just here at the Johnson Space Center but by our colleagues in Hawthorne, California at the SpaceX Control Center. We will be back on the air just over an hour from now at 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 12:45 a.m. Eastern Time for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew 9 crew from the International Space Station. The weather conditions off the coast of Florida and the splashdown sites continues to be good, with splashdown of Williams, Wilmore, Gorbanov, and Hague scheduled for Tuesday afternoon to complete an extended 9.5-month mission in space. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a momentous night to begin the journey home for Crew 9. Williams and Wilmore, having launched back on June 5th on a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, propulsion system issues resulted in a decision by NASA to bring Williams and Wilmore home on the SpaceX Dragon Freedom spacecraft. Crew 9, that meaning Hague and Gorbanov, launched with 2 empty seats aboard Freedom back in late September, clearing the way for Williams and Wilmore to join them on the ride home, the beginning of which will occur just about 2 hours and 12 minutes from now with the undocking of Freedom from that space-facing port on the Harmony module. At the time that the Dragon splashes down in the Gulf of America off the Gulf Coast late Tuesday afternoon, Williams and Wilmore will have spent 286 days in space, 285 of which aboard the International Space Station. They will have completed 4,576 orbits of the Earth in a mission spanning 121.3 million statute miles. Hague and Gorbanov's, their mission duration, 171 days, 170 days of which aboard the International Space Station. Their mission will have spanned 2,736 orbits of the Earth, 72.5 million statute miles. The Crew 9 departing crew, they have donned their garments, their undergarments, if you will. Nick Hague just off on the right side of your screen. They will be assisted through that hatchway to close the hatch behind them. That hatch closure expected about 30 minutes, perhaps a bit less than that.
Freedom, Houston, on 2, stand by for big loop audio config.
And if I was up there,
And I'll need 2 minutes before I can do a comm check.
We copy.
if I was up there, I would be like a child. I'd be stuck to that window looking at planet Earth. Just a fascinating sight.
As they complete the hatch closure and then subsequently the undocking of the International Space Station. She is part of that Orbit 3 team that is led by Flight Director Marcos Flores tonight. He is the lead. Freedom will be coming home to late Tuesday afternoon with splashdown scheduled at 4:50. Astronaut Ann McClain, the commander of the Dragon Endurance, that automatically docked to the forward port of the Harmony module in the wee hours of Sunday morning to initiate about 1+ days of handover activities with the Crew 9 crew. The abbreviated handover was specifically designed to provide as many undocking opportunities as possible for Crew 9. The decision to bring the Crew 9 crew back to Earth on Tuesday was dictated by what is forecast to be pristine weather conditions at the various landing sites in the Gulf of America that the Dragon Freedom will be coming home to late Tuesday afternoon with splashdown scheduled at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. Nick Hague, the commander of the Dragon Freedom, floating through the hatchway. We will see Williams and Wilmore shortly as they are completing their suit-up activities. The final suit-up will take place once the 4 crew members are inside Dragon and the hatch is closed between Dragon and the International Space Station. The station hatch on that side of the docking interface will be closed after the Dragon hatch is closed. Wilmore and Williams have performed informal suit and seat fit checks on orbit using 2 spare suits on the International Space Station. The SpaceX team supported this effort and gathered data to make an
What I
informed
missed? They were all sitting there. Now what happened?
that they would wear on the ride home and the seat sizing. A new suit was actually flown up for Butch Wilmore on the Crew 9 mission that arrived on the station at the end of September. Wilmore and Williams also performed suit donning and doffing activities to familiarize themselves with the suits and with Dragon systems during the handover between Crew 8 and Crew 9 back in September. And this is not a new activity for Williams and Wilmore. They actually were aboard in those suits during a port relocation that transferred the Freedom spacecraft, the Dragon Freedom, from the forward port of Harmony to the zenith port of Harmony back in November. Once Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbanoff depart the International Space Station just over 2 hours from now, the 7 crew members left aboard the International Space Station will continue the Expedition 72 increment led by the commander of the station, Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin, joined by his cosmonaut colleagues Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, Peskov having just arrived on the station as part of Crew 10. Also continuing on in orbit, NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers, and Don Pettit, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi. Don Pettit will be coming home in late April, April 19th, in fact, U.S. time, on the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft that he rode to orbit in, along with Ovchinin and Wagner from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The International Space Station is currently flying 260 miles above the Earth, currently crossing the southeastern coast of Africa, moving in a trajectory from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. At the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, California, the SpaceX flight controllers are reporting that all of Freedom's systems are in excellent shape. Nick Hague there, as you see on your screen, stowing some last-minute items aboard the Dragon spacecraft that he is commanding from undocking through Splashdown. The weather has been monitored for the splashdown sites in the Gulf of America throughout the day. The reports continue to be that the weather is forecast to be excellent for Dragon's homecoming on Tuesday afternoon. From the time of undocking through splashdown, it's a fairly short phasing, as they term the ballistics end of the operation, about 17 hours of transit between the time the Dragon will undock from the International Space Station and the time it will splash down. Again, splashdown off the coast of Florida in the Gulf is scheduled for 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon. We should be seeing Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore shortly. At the time of splashdown, predicted to be Tuesday afternoon, Williams, again, will have logged 286 days in space on this, her third flight, and a total of 608 days in space, the second most by any American astronaut, right behind Peggy Whitson, who has 675 days in space on her bio. Butch Wilmore, with his 286 days in space at the time of splashdown tomorrow, on this, his third flight, will have logged 464 days in space. Nick Hague, wrapping up his third mission with 171 days in space, will have a total of 374 days in space, to his credit. And again, Alexander Gorbanov of Roscosmos ending his first flight into space with a splashdown tomorrow and a total of 171 days on his biography. We are moving into a brief handover between satellites on the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System. There you see a view of us here in Mission Control in Houston at the Johnson Space Center in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Once again, the flight director in charge of tonight's operation is...
It's like it's got to be a little bit claustrophobic. I mean, you have to deal with that. And if you can't deal with that, I wonder if that's something that they can get over. And after so much training, I'm sure they spend time in, like, I guess, a simulated capsule, and they stay there. That's got to be part of the training, to just for it to be no big deal. If you absolutely are claustrophobic, then I would imagine, that job's not for you.
And it will all be in Hawthorne's hands to bring the crew home.
All right, so apparently...
SpaceX copies LIO unsealed at 0258 Zulu. Continue with IMV duct teardown and hatch closure.
And Freedom Houston on the big loop. Sounded like a good comm check with SpaceX. At your convenience, we'll take a comm check with us.
Now they got to... So they did come out of their seats. There's some more pictures.
Copy.
With those voice checks between Nick Hague and the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne and the Flight Control Room here in Houston, you're seeing Don Pettit and Alexei Ovchinin taking photographs of Butch Wilmore in his entry suit. Sonny Williams is in the foreground near the hatchway.
Come on, don't be late.
Once again, there are two SpaceX Dragons at the International Space Station. The one that the Crew 9 crew will be departing in a couple of hours from now is on the Zenith, or space-facing port of the Harmony module. The newly arrived Crew 10 crew docked early Sunday morning to the forward port of Harmony in their Dragon Endurance. And you see at the hatchway the four departing Crew 9 crew members posing for some final photos.
Space travel so cool. You'd think they're freaking millions traveling millions of miles, hundreds of miles up in space, going around the planet, and then they'll be home in a few hours. Amazing. It is amazing.
few days ago on March 14th with NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers, JAXA or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov. They've spent a couple days in space, with those days docked to the International Space Station being what we call a handover period, where they learn to live and work on station from the crew that's about to leave. Now, the returning Crew 9 members today are NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Sonny Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, which you see on your screen right there. Sonny and Butch spent 285 days on the International Space Station, where they conducted over 4,500 orbits and traveled more than 121 million statute miles. Nick and Alexander spent 170 days on the International Space Station, conducting over 2,700 orbits and traveling more than 72 million statute miles.
The crew is currently suited, and the Dragon and station hatches are both sealed in preparation for Dragon's departure. Once Dragon departs the station, the crew's flight home is expected to last just around 17 hours. Shortly after separation, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of carefully choreographed maneuvers, also called departure burns, to increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. Dragon will also execute a phasing burn to lower its orbit and line the spacecraft up with its landing location. Following phasing, Dragon will complete deorbit, re-entry, and splashdown. During the deorbit sequence, several events occur, including trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and finally splashdown. Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida on Tuesday, March 18th at approximately 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern, where it will be picked up by the SpaceX recovery vessel Megan, and our recovery teams will help to egress or exit the crew from the Dragon spacecraft.
And today on board the International Space Station is the Expedition 72 crew, being led by the current space station commander, Alexei Ovchinin of Roscosmos. Last week, NASA astronaut Sonny Williams handed over command of the space station to him ahead of her upcoming departure today. Also on board space station is NASA astronaut Don Pettit, as well as cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin, Yvonne Wagner, and of course, the recently arrived Crew 10 astronauts. Now, just like its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. NASA astronaut Anne McClain helped the crew.
Freedom SpaceX on the Big Loop. Final reconfigurations for undock complete and nominal. Houston and Hawthorne teams have pulled go for undock sequence start at 0500 Zulu. I'm looking for you to confirm visors down and crew are ready for undock and departure at the planned time.
And we did just hear confirmation that the team in Mission Control and the team in Hawthorne did pull go for undocking. We might hear some continued communications.
Freedom. Visors are down and we are go for undock at the planned time.
SpaceX copies. Crew are configured for undock.
And so that was the voice of NASA astronaut Nick Hague, who is the commander of Dragon, giving the confirmation that they heard the go. So good news, we are continuing to progress down the timeline today for an undocking at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time here in Hawthorne. Now, Mission Control in both Houston and Hawthorne will be backing them up today as we step through undocking. And speaking of Mission Control Houston, let's go over to the voice of NASA, Rob Navius at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, to talk a bit about how the station crew have been preparing to send the crew home and what we can expect from here until Dragon departs station. Rob?
Well, thank you, Sandra. It's been a busy morning so far. About 2 hours ago, the 4 departing Crew 9 crew members did gather in the Harmony module right at the passageway through International Docking Adapter number 2, which connects Harmony with the Dragon Freedom. They had a final opportunity to say goodbye to one another, a final opportunity for the remaining crew members on the station, members of the Expedition 72 crew, to take photographs. As you see there, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore were already suited up in their SpaceX entry suits. Once that was completed and the crew floated back into Freedom, Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov also suited up. Now, just for the statistics, statistic freaks out there, we can tell you that Williams and Wilmore, whose mission, of course, was extended. They launched back on June 5th aboard the Boeing Starliner spacecraft. Last August, NASA decided to bring them home on the Dragon Freedom spacecraft with Crew 9. They will come home with a splashdown on Tuesday afternoon with 286 days in space, a mission encompassing 4,576 orbits of the Earth and 121.3 million miles. But just to put it into context, not the longest single space flights in U.S. history. That distinction belongs to Frank Rubio, who remained on the station for 371 days when his Soyuz spacecraft experienced a coolant leak. He's followed on the list by Mark Vande Hei with 355.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw that picture of Sonny there, and it's a whole lot grayer right now. Obviously, a lot more of it too, but way more gray.
It's not a record-breaking mission. As we stand by for the final procedures to be encompassed here in Mission Control, you're looking at Flight Director Marcos Flores, who is the lead Crew 9 flight director here. To his right is spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell, who will be talking directly to the crew during the undocking phase and during the time that Dragon moves toward the approach ellipsoid, that mythical line in the sand where we complete integrated operations and turn over everything to the folks in Hawthorne to bring Crew 9 home for its splashdown in the Gulf of America on Tuesday afternoon. With that, we'll turn it back to you guys in Hawthorne and stand by for undocking.
Thanks so much, Rob. Thanks so much, Rob. So as you mentioned, we are standing by for separation, which is set to take place here in a little bit more than 10 minutes. We are tracking a 10:05 p.m. Pacific time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern time departure from the space station.
And as we mentioned earlier, just like during its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board.
It looks like it's just sitting there, right? Because those things are moving at 17,000 miles per hour. And it looks like they're just hanging there.
When the undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of 4 departure burns, which are carefully strategized maneuvers that increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. From there, a phasing burn will place Dragon on a trajectory to align it with the splashdown site.
At the moment, the crew is suited up as they are during what we call dynamic phases of flight. And we did hear a call out a short time ago for the crew to go ahead and put their visors down ahead of the actual undocking itself. Before they depart the International Space Station, let's take a quick moment to get to know the crew we're bringing home tomorrow for the splashdown rather. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew 9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013, and this was his second space flight to the International Space Station and third launch overall. He's spent 171 days in space with Crew 9 and has a career total of 374 days in space. During his mission, he completed a spacewalk with astronaut Sonny Williams. That was his 4th spacewalk, earning him a career total of 25 hours, 56 minutes of spacewalking time. Before Crew 9, Hague previously served as a
I wonder if they have like sports cards, like trading cards, you know, with all these crews. And I bet there is.
So this is actually his second time sharing the space station with Ovchinin. The Kansas native is a test pilot and distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the U.S. Space Force in 2021. And he is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons.
NASA astronaut Sonny Williams is a mission specialist for Crew 9. This was her 3rd visit to the space station. She originally launched aboard Boeing's Starliner spacecraft and arrived at the space station on June 6th.
She's a pro. That's why this extended time didn't really bother her too much.
Starliner uncrewed. She became an Expedition 7172 crew member. She logged 286 days in space on this mission. Sonny has a total of 608 days in space, earning her the ranking of 2nd most time in space by a NASA astronaut. Former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson ranks 1st with 675 days in space. Sunny conducted 2 spacewalks and has completed 9 over the course of her career, for a total of 62 hours and 6 minutes of spacewalking time. She ranks 4th on the list of cumulative time spacewalking by a NASA astronaut. Previously, she served on Expedition 14 and 15 in 2007, and again with Expedition 32 and 33 in 2012. She is a retired U.S. Navy captain and a proud graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy.
Next up is NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore, who is also serving as a mission specialist today. This is his 3rd space flight, and just like Sunny, he logged 286 days in space. He conducted 1 spacewalk and has completed 5 over the course of his career, earning him a total spacewalking time of 21 hours, 2 minutes. He's flown on 4 different spacecraft throughout his career: Space Shuttle Atlantis, Soyuz, Boeing Starliner, and now the SpaceX Dragon. Previously, the Mount Juliet, Tennessee native served on STS-129 in 2009 and Expedition 41 and 42 from 2014 to 2015. Wilmore is also a retired captain in the U.S. Navy.
Alexander Gorbanov is the 3rd mission specialist serving on today's mission. Crew 9 was his first spaceflight to the space station, earning him a total of 171 days in space over the course of his career. Gorbanov, along with Nick Hague, saw the arrival of 4 visiting vehicles and saw the departure of 4 as well. The duo orbited the Earth more than 2,700 times. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, Gorbanov worked as an engineer for a Rocket Space Corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. There is an amazing amount of diversity and experience behind the crew coming home today.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are targeting undocking today at 10:05 p.m. Pacific, just a few minutes here from now. There will be an undock command that is sent first. That is expected at 10 p.m. Pacific time. And then it'll take a few minutes for us to actually see the physical separation and everything. But we are getting views right now of Dragon Freedom. What you see on that black portion of your screen there is some of the solar rays that help collect power for the spacecraft. That will remain intact during the phasing, which is about 17 hours for this particular flight. But before splashdown tomorrow afternoon, which we are targeting at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, that portion of Dragon will actually be jettisoned. So it'll just be the white portion that we'll see splashdown. But we're not quite there yet. First, we need to have the spacecraft undock. So again, targeting undock at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time this evening.
That's absolutely right, Sandra. So right now what we're doing on board Dragon is preparing for that undocking sequence to be commanded. Undocking from the space station basically involves separating the umbilicals and those attachment hooks that we use to dock Dragon to the space station. So we're effectively doing what we did during the docking procedure here, but in reverse. All of that in preparation for splashdown tomorrow.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, undock sequence commanded.
And right on schedule, we've got confirmation of that undocking sequence command.
Freedom copies.
Here in Houston in Mission Control, we are now monitoring the demating of the umbilical. This is the mechanism that provided electrical power to the Dragon Freedom during the time it was docked to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. Originally, Freedom docked at the forward port of Harmony, and then back on November 3rd with Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbanov on board.
I know, right? I would be like, come on, everybody sit down. Come on, put your seatbelt on. Let's go. Let's get out of here.
2 gangs of hooks.
What did one shepherd say to the other shepherd? Let's get the flock out of here.
Zenith side of Harmony. Again, Harmony was the port of call for Freedom initially when it arrived back in September. The forward port itself, it experienced a relocation maneuver with Hague, Gorbanov, Williams, and Wilmore on board back on November 3rd to move from the forward port to the zenith port, a short spin around the block to reposition that spacecraft where it has been mated and docked to the International Space Station since last November. 3.5 minutes away from physical separation. Once the physical separation occurs between Dragon and the docking port on Harmony, it will begin to move above the station at a very slow rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. Then we'll move behind the station. A series of departure burns will then put it on a trajectory to carry it below the station and on its way to a safe distance away from the International Space Station for its deorbit burn that will occur at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon to begin the final leg of the ride home for Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbanoff.
Oh, crap, I just thought about something. I might be up all night. Cubs are in Japan playing a baseball game, which starts here at 4 in the morning. God.
2.5 minutes to go until physical separation. All systems
Dang.
reported to be in great shape. The latest weather forecast off the coast of Florida at the Splashdown sites indicates pristine weather for the arrival of the Crew 9 crew on Tuesday afternoon.
Open and nominal.
The first gang of hooks has opened, standing by for the second. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another to initiate that opening rate for Dragon.
Okay, here we go. Almost time.
"90 seconds till physical separation. Heading into the home stretch for Williams and Wilmore, the beginning of the end for a 9.5-month mission in space." The interface between Dragon and the International Docking Adapter no longer sealed.
I'm going to take myself off the
International
chair.
Space Station and Dragon flying from southwest to northeast across the Pacific Ocean at an altitude of 261 statute miles.
Doesn't seem like a lot. 260 miles up into space.
All hooks open.
All hooks are open. And undocking confirmed.
Here it is.
Freedom is free of its moorings. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore begin their belated trip
Dragon
home.
separation confirmed.
Undocking occurring right on time at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time.
Okay, time to close the hatch. Close the little nose cone thingy.
Motion, good stability on Dragon as it backs away.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, depart burn 0 nominal.
Good opening rate reported by the visiting vehicle officer.
That's freaking awesome. Oh no. Oh, there you go. Come on, somebody push the buttons. Let's get out of here. Close the door. I'll be like, close the door.
Dragon's attitude control system functioning as advertised.
And Freedom on the big loop. On behalf of Crew 9, I'd like to say it was a privilege to call station home, to live and work and be a part of a mission and a team that spans the globe, working together in cooperation for the benefit of humanity. To our colleagues and dear friends who remain on the station, Alex and Vapor, Todd, Grill, we know the station's in great hands. We're excited to see what you guys are going to accomplish, and we'll be waiting for you. Crew 9's going home.
Houston Station on the Big Loop. Step 2, ISS thrusters are verified, enabled. To Crew 9, safe journey home. It's been the honor of a lifetime to cross your path up here on Space Station. Your service has been very much appreciated, and we'll miss you, but have a great journey home.
And this is back. I wish we could spend more time with you guys, but many people who love you and whom you love are waiting for you. So safe travel, Godspeed.
And for crew arrival, we ring a bell in Navy tradition, and for Crew 9, I did a baritone salute as you undocked.
So an exchange of poignant words between the Dragon commander, Nick Hague, as well as the Crew 10 crew, the newly arrived Crew 10 crew members, Ann McLean, Takoya Onishi, and Don Pettit, offering their best wishes and Godspeed for a safe return to Earth on Tuesday afternoon for the quartet aboard the Dragon Freedom. Dragon continues an opening rate away from the zenith port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station, undocking occurring just about 5 minutes ago at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, coming up here in the next minute or so will be the spacecraft's exit from what is called the keep-out sphere. That is the first imaginary line between the space station and the departure corridor for the Dragon itself. That will be followed by Dragon maneuvering to a Sun communications pointing orientation and to enable better communications between the tracking and data relay satellite system and Dragon's communications capability itself. The approach ellipsoid exit, that basically is the end of integrated operations, where Dragon will cross that imaginary line to move beyond the neighborhood of the station, as it were, is scheduled about 14 minutes from now. Departure 1 burn now complete, all nominal.
Depart burn 1 nominal. Your go to DOF suits per procedure 4.012. And a final reminder that
will the nose cone get as hot as it usually does on reentry? Am I old and haven't watched? Well, I think it does. I mean, while the nose cone is pointed, down into where it's going to Earth, I believe it does go through some heat. I don't know if it lights up or anything. I don't know. I'll find out tomorrow.
Thrusters operating in perfect fashion. acknowledgement by the spacecraft communicator in Hawthorne to Commander Nick Hague aboard Freedom that the crew has been given the go-ahead to get out of their entry suits for the time being, get into more comfortable clothing as Dragon continues its traverse away from the International Space Station. This will continue throughout the course of the overnight hours into tomorrow afternoon, a series of pre-programmed maneuvers that will enable Freedom to be in a position for its deorbit burn on Tuesday afternoon. That deorbit burn is scheduled to take place at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver to enable Dragon to slip out of orbit. Its velocity slowed by 53.2 meters per second, enabling it to begin its high-speed entry back through Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America at 4:57 p.m. Central, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
Station and Houston, on the big loop, Dragon has exited the keep out sphere.
Well, I don't know if there's going to be much visible if they've got a camera tuned on this thing or what, but
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon has exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a 24-hour safe free drift path. Configure comm for Dragon to ground in preparation for big loop deactivation.
yeah, Vicky, that was a cool shot of the space station as the Dragon was backing away. Yeah, that's like movie shit.
I'm Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Premature call. We have exited the keep out sphere but are still in the approach ellipsoid.
Bummer, we can't see any of that stuff.
SpaceX Freedom, come check on the hidden light.
Freedom, we have you loud and clear. How us?
The Dragon, having crossed the keep-out sphere, next major milestone will be the exiting of the approach ellipsoid to depart the neighborhood of the station. With that, we'll toss it for the moment back to Hawthorne and Veronica and Sandra.
Thanks so much, Rob. As Rob just mentioned, we are now waiting for Dragon to exit the approach ellipsoid, also known as AE, which is another imaginary shape, this time a three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, in the same family as the keep-out sphere. It's one of several safety zones set up to govern visiting spacecraft, either arriving or departing the station. Before moving into the keep-out sphere or the approach ellipsoid, spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for a set period of time, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering.
That's right. And that approach ellipsoid, once we get past that milestone, will be something that we call the end of integrated operations. And integrated operations means that we are talking to each other on the big loop. So we did hear those communications back and forth. The big loop is essentially not only the crew on the International Space Station, the crew in Dragon, but also both Mission Control Houston and in Hawthorne. Hence the name, the Big Loop, because they're all working together to make sure that they have common communications during some of these dynamic portions of flight. So again, we are standing by for approach ellipsoid exit at 10:24 p.m. Pacific time. And on your screen there, we are getting a view of Dragon from the International Space Station, now quite a bit smaller than when we just saw it a few minutes ago, undocking at 10:05 p.m. Pacific. Also in the line of sight there, we have a small view of the Canada arm, which is a robotic arm that helps do some maneuvering and is utilized a lot during spacewalks on board the International Space Station. So to recap, the hatches between the International Space Station and Dragon were closed earlier today at 8:05 p.m. Pacific, 11:05 p.m. Eastern. Since then, the crew has settled in and is working to take off their spacesuits for their 17-hour journey back to Earth. The joint NASA and SpaceX teams did, of course, poll go to proceed with undocking, and that undocking command was then sent at 10 p.m. Pacific, followed by umbilical retraction and hooks opening, with physical separation taking place at 10:05 p.m. Pacific, as the space station and Dragon were traveling 261 statute miles off the coast of Guam over the Pacific Ocean. Dragon then completed 2 of 4 departure burns and has exited the keep-out sphere, and we are now just minutes away from Dragon crossing the approach ellipsoid to set the spacecraft and Crew 9 up for their path back to Earth. Again, Dragon is targeting to splash down off the coast of Florida in the Gulf at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, March 18th, marking the completion of a long-duration science and research mission.
Great views right now on your screen of Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California.
All right, I think we'll leave it there. Let's see. If they're not going to show video of it, I know it's hard to focus because of
maybe some views there of Dragon as well. These views are being controlled by one of the flight controllers in Mission Control Houston called Cronus, and they help to make sure that the cameras are in position to view not only visiting vehicles that are arriving and departing, but also help to ensure that cameras are in position to get great Earth views, ensure that perhaps if we're flying over a natural disaster like a hurricane or a wildfire, they are ensuring that those great cameras on board the International Space Station are being put to good use to capture all of the science and research that we can aboard the microgravity laboratory. And, you know, fun fact, actually, the International Space Station will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence this November. So if you are younger than 25 years old, you have never known a day in your life where there was not a human being living and working aboard the International Space Station.
so cool.
That is so cool to me. It's just this amazing step forward for human exploration in space.
And with that, we're going to check back in with Rob Navius at the Johnson Space Center one more time. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Sandra. You mentioned that continuous presence on board the International Space Station. We are approaching the point of the approach ellipsoid exit, which will mark the end of integrated operations with the International Space Station and the flight control team here in Houston. Just a reminder, on board, 7 crew members representing 3 nations: Alexei Ovchinin, the station commander, and his Roscosmos colleagues Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers, and Don Pettit of NASA, and Takuya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Ovchinin, Wagner, and Pettit are next up to depart the station on April 19th. They are scheduled to return.
So if you're wondering how big is the International Space Station, you know, everything, including those satellite panels, the solar panels, all that, everything, it can virtually sit above or on a football field, like an NFL, you know, pro football field, including the end zones. That's how wide the thing is, and almost just as long and as wide as the football field. All right, I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you so much, Rob, for that update. We really appreciate you joining us here as you spent your evening in Mission Control Houston. Again, we are continuing to get these views following Dragon's undocking from the International Space Station at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time. That sets us up for a splashdown tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Florida. And so we did mention that the crew was busy with a lot of science and research investigations during their time on board the International Space Station.
All right, guys, I'm going to pull the plug on that one. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit tonight. Wasn't as eventful as the other night, but tomorrow on Splashdown, I definitely will plan to be live with that. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for being here again.
We're, of course, standing by for any
we
further
will see you
communication
tomorrow.
from Crew 9 on board Dragon Freedom at this time. But it's a great opportunity for us to comment on some of the amazing science that Crew 9 conducted
Yeah, let me
while they
see.
were on board the station. In total, Crew 9 completed more than 150
Yeah,
experiments,
16 hours.
conducting over 900 hours of research. Following their splashdown tomorrow, some of those time-sensitive experiments will be among the first offloaded off the capsule and then returned to various research facilities across the country so that the science can continue.
And in addition to that science, they also completed a few spacewalks, one of which was to actually swab the outside of the International Space Station for microorganisms to see if anything might potentially be able to survive the harsh environment of space, which is pretty interesting. Another one was a spacewalk to remove a radio frequency group, or the RFG. NASA astronaut Sunny Williams was able to successfully remove that, which was a big milestone for NASA. And as you mentioned, over 530 hours specifically dedicated to NASA science between NASA astronauts.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Sunny Williams.
Back tomorrow.
So that just goes to show the